Hello, and hopefully you're having an interesting, thundering Thursday. So, for those that made it to the Zooms today for 7th hour, but also the 5th hour one yesterday, it was great to see and hear all of you. If you couldn't make it, this video kind of wraps up some of the key points that we talked about. So, one of the key points we talked about was the definition of courage according to Atticus, and how is he trying to teach that to Gemma and Scout. And looking at specific instances from earlier in part one of things like Cecil Jacobs, right? Scout walking away from a fight that she wanted to, fight him, and after he kind of goaded her, she walked away from that fight. And so the lessons of Atticus is coming through. Speaking of lessons of parents, the relationship Atticus had Scout have together is much better than the Aunt Alexandria relationship to her son Francis. And we can see that in chapters 10 and 11 specifically. So if you've gotten there, you might remember how Francis is influenced by his mother and how he kind of parrots things that she says. So look at specific details regarding that. If you haven't gotten to 10 and 11, think about how is Aunt Alexandria influencing her son. The other instances we talked about were the symbols of the Mockingbird that come into play for chapters 10 and 11, as well as the symbol of the rabid dog. Tim Johnson is the name of the dog, but it sounds like a person. So looking at how the rabid dog is a symbol about to inform our understanding of part 2 of the book. The other thing that we talked about with part 1 is that part 1 is kind of this childhood portion of Scout's life, that we saw the childhood games of Scout and Jem and Dill, and how they played a game with Bradley, not with him in person, but they played and invented their own fantasies about him. And then their childhood is slowly ending, especially when the cement is covering the tree hole that they get their trinkets from. As they progress through, they do learn harsher lessons about the world. And so we start with innocence and we move into understanding about the harsh realities of the world. That's going to be mainly part 2. But as we progress through, there are moments that Scout's learning. As she learns, I've talked about the narration part a little bit, but there was some questions that came up in the discussions that older Scout, adult Scout, is looking back at her time in this childhood. And that perspective of a flashback really informs how we can see the world through a child's eyes, especially in part 2, where a lot of harsh realities about racism come into play, that she's learning about this as a child. As an adult, we've already learned that, or it's kind of ingrained in our mind about what the world is like and the harsh brutalities that we see. But learning about the first time, you kind of have to look back and, when did I not know this? And what moments did I learn this happened? And so we can view that through Scout, hopefully. Then the other thing is the MacGuffin. So a MacGuffin is a device that is used at the beginning of a story to kind of hook the audience. And so if somebody asked, this was a story about Jem breaking his arm, right? That was the first paragraph. I'm going to tell you about the story about Jem, my brother, breaking his arm. And then we have this whole other thing that we don't answer about what that is. You'll eventually learn why he broke his arm and why is Scout using that to hook us and to get to that ending. But it's mainly about this 2-year journey she has as a child. So those are the kind of couple things I wanted to touch on before the short answer test tomorrow. So as a reminder, there's a short answer test tomorrow. You'll have it open at 8 a.m. and it'll close at 3:30 p.m. And you'll have one of the 4 prompts listed, and so you can kind of see which one you have. Even before tomorrow, you don't know the exact prompt, but you can see the number and kind of click on that tomorrow. And so you just have to write a detailed paragraph using textual evidence to support your answer for that. So let me know if you have any questions, and hopefully you're enjoying this book. It's one of the classics, and it's probably the easiest but also the most enjoyable book we've read so far this year, in my opinion at least, too. So have a great Thursday, and I'll talk to you all soon.